Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Conryd and Sam from Fable Fury Studios. Their debut title, a cooperative game called Fable Fury, is crushing it on Kickstarter. Gentlemen, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
Doing good.
Thanks,
Thanks,
James.
thanks, James. That was a great intro.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm so happy to have you guys join. I don't get many co-op games, shockingly, on this podcast. So anytime I can get a co-op, man, it gets me excited. I know there's some co-op games I'm working on in my future, so I always like to kind of see behind the scenes of what other people are doing. And this one definitely caught my eye, the way it was kind of structured. Obviously, the beautiful artwork and so forth. So we're going to get to that in this episode. But I wanted to start off first with kind of your backstory. I found it very interesting. So you're both from South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead, Connor.
we've known each other since we were 6 and 8. My earliest memories have Sam in it, and I think it's the same for him. So we've known each other for a long time. We've been best friends forever. We've worked together, as adults on all the projects we've done, and so we've just had a really cool, really unique synergy, and that works well for us.
So now, when you guys, so you guys are in the States right now. I believe you were saying just before we went on air, you're in Utah. Now, did your families kind of come over at the same time, or?
Yeah, so our families were immigrated to Utah about 3 years apart. So there was a space there where I was in Utah and Conrad was in South Africa, and then his family immigrated. And at that point, I was in high school, so I reverted to an American accent. He moved over, and I got teased relentlessly. And then,
I didn't stop.
pow, here comes the accent. Yeah.
Now, the two families must have known each other quite well for you guys to be best friends. South Africa, now in Utah. What was the connection that they were they work colleagues or something, or what was the connection to bring them over at the same time to the exact same spot?
We went to the same church out there in South Africa.
Got it. Okay. Wow. And then, so what, and for like, because this is your first debut title, but kind of before board games, like what were you guys doing? Like, what's your kind of, do you have day jobs, or what have you been doing outside of board gaming?
Oh man. So we've had quite the interesting career. So Conrad and I were in the music industry. We were music producers and DJs during the EDM wave as it happened into the United States. And we were out in Miami, having a really crazy time. And about 2015, we decided to take a break from Miami and that world. And we were, I wanted to raise a family. Connor wanted to raise a family. So we moved out here to Utah. And we quit the music industry probably within, I think, a year, right, Connor? We had a record label that we sold. And
A year and a half,
um,
almost 2 years, yeah.
yeah. And then me and Connor both went kind of working on a separate projects for a year. And then we came together for a financial company, of all things. We scaled and grew a company called Proven CFO. It's an outsourced accounting finance company because our backgrounds aren't music and it's not board games either. So we scaled the company, we sold it last December. And then since then, we've been working on Fable Fury full time.
So your backgrounds was in tech or financial tech. Is that kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate.
is this something you took in school, or like kind of what got you into that industry?
So I was, always a numbers person. I went to school for accounting and business, and I was in banking when I first left college, and I hated it and got into music. That's pretty much it.
I've been self-taught on almost all of it. So I've just had a natural knack for technology and systems and things like that. And
Yeah.
just kind of as, we've spun up different businesses, always just kind of been like, what's the biggest need we have right now? Okay, I'll learn to do that and fill that need. And so kind of just
I, th-
taught myself through all of that.
I think unless you're doing like systems and networking, any kind of software, I think the majority of it's probably self-taught now, right? Just with the immense number of tools online and access to resources and how fast things are changing. I gotta imagine most people that are ahead of the curve are probably jumping into it and kind of trying to absorb as much of that as they can in real time. Is that fair to say? Or
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's there's so much online that I mean you could learn everything that you need just just finding the right sources.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. And then how long you guys been board gaming for? Is this something you've been doing your whole life, or is this like a new hobby for you guys, or how'd you get into board gaming?
So Connor and I always played games since we were little kids, and I don't mean just board games. Like we would be walking in the middle of Africa, and like we were talking like in the mountains in the Drakensberg, and we'd come up with a cool game, go on an adventure, disappear, and there's always some sort of game we'd create as we go along. We've been doing that, like I said, this almost like 3, 4 decades now. When it comes to board gaming, though, you know, we play board games. I played, like Catan and Risk and Monopoly and all
Sure.
the basic games that you play, and I kind of go into some of the more hobbyist board gaming about 5, 6 years ago, and that was through my brother-in-law. He's into D&D, he's into Dune Imperium and some of these, more complex titles. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring my wife into this. She's gonna love it. She hated it. It's because it was just not for her. And I was like, I really want her to experience what I'm experiencing, and I just want to figure out how to translate that into a more entry-level experience. And that's kind of, how we kind of got into the Fable Fury, like, hey, let's make our own game kind of a thing. And I know Conrad, he's been playing board games with his kids for like since the last 8 years, I think.
Yeah, yes, and yeah, I've been playing board games since forever. Um, but yeah, I mean, we were both working in accounting at the time, and coming from the music industry, we needed a creative outlet,
Yeah.
and so Sam came up with this suggestion of like, hey, why don't we just make our own thing? And we just started from there, just kind of dumping all of the creativity we had, kind of just storing up. We just kind of dumped that into something that we would love, like we would love to play.
How many different kind of like ideas did you start and stop before you landed on this current one?
A million. So I love the very first prototype that we made, it was like we made it within a week, and we played it together, and we realized that we had built a math simulator. It was just basically rolling dice and doing math, and we are like, this isn't fun. What are we missing?
And
So yeah.
we were so pumped about it too. Like we were we would walk around the office. There's a river that flows by it, so we'd walk down there to just kind of get the blood flowing, take a break from the computer and screens. And we talked about it. We're like, this is the greatest idea ever. Like this is going to be so fun. Like I can't believe nobody's done this before. And then we cut up cards and printed it, like Sam said, and we played it, and it was awful. It was terrible to do in person.
Yeah. As most first ideas are, right? Like
Right.
it always plays out easier and cleaner in your head until you actually get the tactile experience. And good for you guys though to be able to quickly identify that. Wait a second, this idea is the key thing that brings gaming together is fun, right? And so if something's not
Yeah.
fun, don't keep grinding away at it. It might be time to kind of just say, okay, that was a learning, that was an experience. Now let me just kind of jettison that and get on to the next idea that might actually work, right?
Right, which has been good because I mean, at its core, Fable Fury is still kind of that first iteration.
Mm.
It's just been better. So we just kind of took that and we refined it. And so every bad idea we had helped us peel back a layer and get something cleaner, something better. And so, I mean, like Sam said, we ran through 1,000 bad ideas, but they're all good learning experiences for us to kind of polish up what we have now.
And Sam, what was the seed of the idea? So for Fable Fury, because there's obviously we're going to show the world here in a second. There's a lot of characters and so forth. You've created kind of this really interesting world. But what was the seed of the idea before that? Was it something more basic in terms of kind of working at the mechanisms of how this game kind of comes together, or was it based on the story elements and then you try to figure out, okay, now how are we going to turn that into a game? What was that process?
So it started off with thinking about, hey, how do you guarantee a good D&D dungeon
Mm,
experience?
yeah.
How do you guarantee that? You have to have a really good DM. You have to have a party that has a good synergy in some way. And the DM needs to prepare, and then I mean that's so, but how do you guarantee that? And so what we realized is that to do that without an actual person and to have it handled by the cards, if you will, it really is a roguelike game. So you think of Slay the Spire, you think of Across the Obelisk, you think of um, Binding of
Is Dead
Isaac, you think of,
Cells, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you think of games like that, and you realize like, hey, like the DM really is creating the roguelike for you to create that open world experience, and it's always different every time.
Hmm.
But if we wanted to have it as a board game and didn't rely on the DM, and I could just sit there with, my wife or our kids and pull it up and play for 60 to 90 minutes, and it was an experience just as good as if it was prepared DM, then we hit our goal. In terms of like the branding and the characters and that sort of feel, I'd have to defer to Conryd because he's been a lot of the feel with that to keep it whimsical on the design side.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean the design is and we should have sent you some of the old designs,
Oh
but
man,
there was, I mean, it's gone through iterations where it was just cards with words on it,
Sure.
and eventually we refined it. We Sam and I joke around and we have fun, and so we knew we wanted the game to carry that same humor into it.
Yeah.
And we wanted to give the player a lot of information, but also give enough space for the images to kind of be humorous. That there's if we give the images just this tiny space, you can't tell a lot of jokes in those pictures. And so
Sure.
it came a lot to kind of how do we give information but leave space for the life of the game. So that's been a hard balance for us to find.
we also found out that we're not as funny as we thought we were. So
With
weird.
yeah,
We're funny with it. So we have like our own humor that we've built over 30 something years. So when we say something to each other, it's like hilarious. And then it's like we put all this humor onto the cards, and I'd say 1 out of 10 people would get the joke or laugh or
Mm.
like, or they'll just read it. And we realized like our humor uh, in its without a lot of work just didn't translate to paper and then a random person reading it. So over years, because like I said, it's been 5 years in development. Over years, we had to literally learn how to be a writer. That's been really hard because it wasn't innate for us to be like, oh yeah, we're funny joke writers. We can write jokes. We were unfunny, but we wanted people to laugh like we were laughing. So it
Mm.
was learning how to do that. And we spoke to so many professionals and did so much research and had so many other people come through and write stuff and teach us. So yeah, it's been a lot of work.
Oh yeah, these things are always way more than I think people outside looking in realize, but also more work than you often feel it's going to be before you start the task. It's like any task, right? It's like doing a renovation in your house, right? And you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get this done in an afternoon, and like 7 days later, you're still working on it, right? So it's one of those things that the more you kind of peel back the onion, so to speak, the more details you realize and things you have to flush out, right?
right.
At what
Yeah.
point did you say, okay, I think we're ready now? Like now we're good to go for Kickstarter. What was the point when you kind of reached that?
I don't
Uh,
I don't know if I don't think we ever felt ready. It was just kind of we have to do it, otherwise we would sit and develop this game for another 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I think we just got to the point where we went, I mean, it's good, it's fun, people enjoy it. Let's stop tinkering, and let's just put it out there. But I don't know if maybe Sam did, but I don't know if I ever felt where I was like, okay, I'm ready, let's ship it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
we knew we
There,
had to.
there was a point though where we were playing with the prototype and just watching people play that I felt like, oh, it's quote unquote done, as in like it's fun. It's fun without us. It's fun
Mm.
with people playing. It's fun. It's like, and the mechanics all work really well. There wasn't like oh, this is broken.
Yeah.
Someone figured out a way to break this. It was, with a roguelike, there's a lot of math involved and a lot of database stuff and a lot of formula to make sure that you've got good scale and you've got good, managing of randomness and terms within that framework.
Hmm.
Once it got to there and it was sitting by itself, working well, that's when I felt like, okay, like let's just now finalize it, like get the right components, get the right refinements here and there. Um, and that I think happened what, like 5 months ago, Conrad, 4 months ago, 5 months
Yeah.
ago, somewhere around there. And we said, hey, all right, let's just pull the trigger on the Kickstarter. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Because like Conrad said, like honestly, there's the feeling of because we were just at BGG Con and we played with like board game reviewers, game developers, publishers, like play with everyone, and we still got feedback on it. It was like, oh hey, let's refine this. And if we just didn't have this date, I think we would work on this for like 10, 15 years. Like it really is just we're always on the pursuit of perfection. And so with board games, I mean, at some point you gotta be like, this is it. It's a 9 out of 10, for us, and it might take 10 years to get it to a 10 out of 10 in our own heads.
That's the designer's curse, right? Is that it's
Mm.
never
Yeah.
done. Even when you launch it, you're still thinking, okay, what else can I add to this? Maybe through expansions or what are, add-on kits I can do? What are some additional cards I can do? It's never done and it's never going to be perfect. And anytime you show it to someone, especially a designer, another designer, there's always going to be things that they're going to say, oh, what about this? Or maybe you should have thought about this, right? So I try to shoot for when is it viable versus when is it done? Right?
Oh
When
yeah.
is the game viable versus done? And once it's viable, then you need to start switching over to, okay, now let's move towards commercialization, right? Because otherwise you're gonna be spending a lot of time on tinkering versus,
Right.
literally moving it forward. And you get diminishing rates of return on that, right? The longer you keep working on something that is viable, the less incremental benefit you're going to get out of making those particular changes. And I'm sure and I know several designers that you go to your local prototype nights and it's the same person with the same game like 7 years later, right? They haven't, and it's still they're tinkering. It's like, you gotta now say, okay, it's viable, time to move to the next step, right?
Yeah. That was a
Exactly.
lesson we learned in music. Because it's always felt like a song was never done.
Yeah.
And you just said at some point, we have to release. If we don't release, we're going to become irrelevant because we're not releasing, in enough, but good enough schedule. So kind of remind me of that is that, hey, at some point, everyone's loving the game. The feedback we got at playing with these guys was like, I mean, he literally would point at his buddies and be like, you can't buy that. Like he's like, these guys are all sitting around laughing, having fun, having a good time together, and they're just playing your game. He's like, it's good. Like here's a couple ideas, and but he's like, it's good. Like it's good.
Right.
Yeah. With your Kickstarter page, I'm going to show this for people who are watching either live or on the replay. Um, Gosh, and I'm gonna put this in Canadian dollars because it's the only way I can see it. But you're at $603,000 on a target of 14,000. So 3,730 back. Or still got 8 days to go. You guys got to be incredibly pleased with that being your first game. That's a large number. So congrats to you guys on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's amazing, and I think it shows, right? When I look at the artwork on your page, like it's very, as you said, whimsical was, I think, was a great word to use. It's very colorful. It pulls you in. It looks like there's a lot of meat on the bone. So when you look at like all the game components, it's just the list keeps going and going and going, which again is something that I think encourages people from a value standpoint. Like, am I getting my money's worth, right, in this game? For those that are listening, maybe not watching, can you describe kind of how to play this game using descriptive words?
Yeah, sure. So the game is a roguelike, right? So it's cooperative, fully cooperative. We don't have any kind of head-to-head competitiveness there, but I mean, you can attack your friends if you want to. But so everybody picks a hero. You kind of take on a persona. We've got 6 heroes in the base game, all kind of with their own unique skills, all their own unique quirks. And then as a party, you take different area cards, and we have a big game board, and you deal the area cards onto the board face down, and it becomes kind of this unexplored fog of war map.
Mm.
And then you take turns as a party leader. You flip over the area, and then you take the actions based on what the area is. You can run into an enemy where you and your party will have to fight them. You could run into traps, which you and your party then have to dodge or take damage. And then you run into stories where kind of just random wacky things happen. You run into um, a goblin trying to sell you stolen merchandise in the back door, and you run into dragons sleeping where you've got to leave some of your loot behind and try not wake them up. And you run into all of these experiences. And what you're hunting for as a party as you explore through the areas is you're hunting for 3 runes. So you'll go through 3 different levels per se. You'll collect the 3 runes, and those 3 runes, when you combine them, will unlock the the final portal, and then that portal takes you to the boss fight at the end. And as a party, if you can defeat the boss at the end, you win the game. But if you all fall and fail and die, it's game over, and take what you've learned and try again.
And what's the length of time to play a game? Like, how long does this game play?
You could be done in 60 to 90 minutes. Depends how big your party size, how long you decide to argue about what to do. But me and Conrad, when we play test, it's just me and him. We'll run through it in like 30 to 45 minutes,
Sure.
just because we're just obviously play testing for data. Um, but yeah, for a general first time, I'd budget about 60 to 90 minutes.
Is there anything in here that you guys have built into a common? One of the common complaints with co-ops is that you've got a puppet master and then you've got everyone else just doing what one person just basically dominates and like is instructing, and it's like, oh, that's great. I'm here as this person's NPC essentially, right? Like I'm not able to make decisions on my own. Have you incorporated anything in here to kind of deal with that and kind of spread and balance that out a little bit more?
Yeah,
Hopefully,
go ahead.
so we have a party leader system. So each player will take a turn as a party leader,
Mm,
and it's the party leader's final say. The party leader can make the decision for the entire party on their turn,
that's cool.
whether it's what the other players want to do or not. And we've had some really funny things that have come out of that where people disagree on what the next step should be. And the party leader goes, "Well, I'm doing it anyway," and he does it. And sometimes it works out for the party, and sometimes he kills everyone. But yeah, so we try to make sure that it wasn't the player who knew the game the best, who was kind of just playing six characters and people were kind of sitting around the table. We wanted to make sure that everybody had a voice and that their voice mattered.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's a great idea too, because I think that like I have some people I play some co-ops with, and it very much gets like that, where it's like they're like, "How do you want to play?" They'll say whatever game it is they want to play, and I'm just like, ugh, I just dreading because I know it's an hour and a half of me just
Just
let me
sitting
know,
through
let
it.
me know what I'm doing, guys. Right? Like you
Yep.
don't really get to have that agency as much as you would have in another game. So it's cool that you guys have built something in there to accommodate that. You did have two pledge levels I saw in here. I actually want to shout out to Ori Kagan too. I see that you've got him as your Kickstarter video, and your Kickstarter video is fantastic on this game. So
Ori's
congrats on that.
amazing. Yep.
Launch Boom as well. Congrats on Launch Boom. They just joined Blue Sky as well. So anybody listening, make sure you follow Launch Boom on Blue Sky. And I did see something in here about you had some can you talk us through the different pledge levels? Because there's like your base pledge, which seems like there's a lot of stuff in that, and then your premium level I think had even more. Did I read that wrong or?
No, that seems about right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just double check because like I said, we just got back from Board Game Con last night.
So you got like
So
the everything
obviously,
bundle, right? So there's like the main level,
yeah.
which gives you kind of your base game, and it comes with this cool
Mhm.
coin marker as a Kickstarter exclusive. Then you have everything bundle, which it looks like it comes with like additional kind of story add-ons, I guess. Premium metal coins, besties versus baddies, character expansion, things like that.
Yep, that's accurate. So
Yeah,
the everything bundle is everything that we would just love to have ourselves. Like when
sure.
we've play tested, we've got metal coins, and everyone says, "Please, can we have metal coins?" And as you know, on the designer side, you're like, I want to put metal coins in everything. It's just expensive. So we added as an add-on for to save costs so that we can get the game to the public at a very reasonable price.
Yeah.
So we got the metal coins in there. We've got this expansion, Bessies versus Baddies, where we've had these other heroes. That's if you see like I've got them right here, like it's like this huge cardboard thing with like their skills, and it's like a
Yeah.
dual layer cut out and their dice. So we've got six more characters, and we've got three more monsters included in that, and then obviously all the components that go with them, the dice and the dials, etc. And then it also includes the additional enemies. So we've got a whole, literally double the amount of enemies that the game has. We've included as an expansion as well.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I always say with metal coin, I love metal coins. Just the clinking of it and the throwing it on the
Right.
table. You feel like a pirate sometimes. You're playing certain
Yeah.
games, right? You're throwing the money in, but you always pay for it twice, right? So you pay the
Yeah.
cost of the coins, which are very expensive to get the molds and so forth done, and then you pay for it in shipping weight,
Right.
right? Because it
Mhm.
makes the games heavier. So now it's going to cost me even more to ship it to the backer. And I think sometimes backers don't necessarily account for that. They're like, oh, I'll pay the premium for the coins. And then some, I mean, well, why am I paying more for, the shipping on this premium version? Well, it's because there's a lot more stuff in it and there's a lot more weight, right? And then that costs
Yeah.
to get across the ocean. Um, The other thing I thought was really cool too, and I'm glad you mentioned it because one of the videos. It didn't show on your page as well as it did in one of your reviewers' videos where they actually like held up the board. But the way you guys have designed your dual layer boards, I think, is really cool too. Like the player boards, how you have the slots, right? So you can have your upgrade slots and things fit in nicely. And it just, anytime you get chunky components like that, I'm always a fan. And I thought, that was obviously a reflection of you guys paying attention to the quality of the game, right? And how you wanted the production value to look.
Well,
Yeah,
they
we're
also
very. Go ahead.
go on.
Sorry.
They also form they serve a like a utility purpose.
Yeah.
We realized that we're creating rules where like, hey, you can only buy so many of these and you can only hold so many of these, and we realized like, hey, if we just give them a backpack, that can handle some of the rules for us where the player doesn't have to remember that. They just know, oh, hey, my bag's full. I can't buy anything else.
Yeah.
And then I think Sam's going to talk to that, but we wanted it to be tactile. We wanted it to be fun. And for us, that was like, hey, well, I don't want to put something next to a picture of a bag. I want to put it in the bag.
Yeah.
And so we came up with this double layer thing where you slot your items and you slot your loot in. When you get a skill and you upgrade your hero, you push that into the hero's board and it becomes part of what you're playing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're very proud of the components. It was the last thing that we had designed. The whole game works like we are video gamers as well, so that the
Mhm.
whole game works in terms of like data and numbers, etc. And then we moved on to the component side to make sure it's all very visceral, tactile experience. But we're so proud of the fact that our box weighs 7 pounds. It's literally the heaviest box for its size that we've come across so far. We checked out like every board game out at BGG, and we'd talk to people at booths, etc. And they're like, our box is 6 pounds, and they're showing off, and like, I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, my box is 7 pounds. But we're very proud of how much we've got in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that becomes very costly to ship too, right? So again,
Yes.
hopefully people can appreciate just exactly how big of a bill you're gonna have to pay to get that around the world. You also had slots on for your dice, I noticed too. So back to your point of
Yep.
making it intuitive when you max out. Same with on your player boards with the dice, right? So if they're expanding
Right.
the number of dice they're able to play with, there's a physical slot it goes into, so okay, I've maxed out how many dice I can have for this player, right?
Right, yeah. As you upgrade your weapon, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
And so they've all kind of got different max, and we didn't want you to play one character where you knew the max was 6, and then play another character where the max might be 4, and have to remember all of that. And so, the components handle a lot of the rule telling and the rule remembering for us,
yeah.
which is what we work towards.
So where do you guys go from here? Like, what is the plan? This is your first game, your debut title, and your company name is literally named after your debut title. Is it expansion of this world? Are you working on other games? Is it when this project's done, you move on to some other stuff? Like, what is kind of your plan for the board game industry now, as potentially as a publisher?
So, to kind of pull back the curtain,
Yeah,
we during game developments, our game was a lot more complex. We had things like status, so heroes could do like burn and like poison and decay, and like all sorts of like fun status things. We've also got additional enemy types that we had in the game. We had pets, we had hordes, we had
Summoners, yeah.
yeah, so we would be multiple enemies, and the game was very complex. And it was just something that was took a very long to pick up. And so we were just like, hey, let's pull this out and get to the core of the fun, which we've gotten to. And what we'd love to do is be able to introduce like an expansion that just deals with that thing that we took out. Bring in an expansion that has status or summoners and dealing with horde, or to have an expansion that's got pets and like a cool little thing that goes, travels along with you. But to be honest, we haven't made any steps towards the next end because we just want to focus on this. We've been asked that a lot by retailers, distributors, licensing people, and we're just like, honestly, the only thing we thought about is let's just have a really good Kickstarter, let's get this game out, and then once we understand, the where we are in the industry, we can make some decisions from there. But there's a lot of places we can go with the game itself. But a lot of people have spoken to us and said, hey, maybe make a different IP at the same time, and at least from my perspective, I'm just not sure what is the next step beyond this.
Right. This game was so complex that we told ourselves our next game is going to be a game that has a stick and a stone, and that's it. Something super simple.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, the expandability of this, I think, is pretty broad, right? Like, in going through your page and looking at the videos, it's like, okay, I can see how they can expand this thing out infinitely, right? Like more missions, more characters, even reskin this to maybe go to another part of the world. Like, there's so many different things you can do with this base game that once you get people, I think, into kind of the engine, you're probably going to have them for a long time. So it's probably a smart play to kind of see this thing through the end, especially being your first title and making sure it's done right the first time.
Yeah.
And then kind of building from there. Or for people that want to check this out, I am going to put a link in the show notes. I encourage them to check it out. It does look super awesome, this game. Or if they want to find it on Kickstarter themselves, simply just type in Fable. That's LE, not EL, and it'll pop up on their page, and you can check out the page there. Again, guys, I want to wish you all the best on this. I mean, you are killing it, and you still got 8 days to go. I can't wait to see how this thing ends, and I'll be cheering for you guys when you do your next phase.
Thanks,
Great.
James.
Thanks, James.
All right, guys, you take care. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.